Welcome one, welcome all to yet another Borderlands 4 video. Believe it or not, I do talk other games and such, but Borderlands will always take priority as it's my favorite franchise. So if you like Borderlands, get subbed. For this video, I scraped Twitter and put together every small detail I could find about Borderlands 4 for this video. First is this clip from JoltsDude139, linked to his channel below, where he was basically questioning if the Moxsy's big encore machine boss respawns are just glorified loading screens, and you can see here how long he has it taking, and Anthony, head of development for Borderlands 4, replies to this exact clip and says it takes a fraction of the time of your example and is much faster than save quitting, end quote. This is great to hear and makes it a pure quality of life change. I'm still so curious as to how it works. Is this a vending machine kind of thing where you run up to it and there's this menu selection where we have to go through, or a way I imagine it in my head is more akin to a fast travel looking machine, and you run up to it, press X or something, and then the boss digistructs and maybe goes through an animation similar to us respawning where you see yourself being rebuilt. I think this would be the best and quickest way, kind of like when Wonderlands Redux made those pedestals to respawn enemies. If you haven't seen Wonderlands Redux, by the way, I have a video all about it, linked down below. Moving forward, we have this guy Lima's asking about the difficulty as they talked about being able to have separate difficulties set in co-op, and I've seen a handful of people talk about this, but let's get to what he said. He goes, I was rewatching the Borderlands 4 gameplay vid, and when they mentioned the co-op difficulty, do we know more about that? Is this a new thing? Like, does it give higher drop rates, or is it just for co-op or solo as well? Is it like OP levels, but can choose it straight away from main menu? End quote. Having difficulties in Borderlands is nothing new, as Borderlands 3 had difficulties you could pick through, and it really had no effect on how the game felt. I would just ignore it and pick the normal one and never give this any attention beyond that. I think the only reason they brought this up was to mention the fact that now, if for some reason you decide to stray from the difficulty Borderlands was meant to be, then it's instanced and won't affect the other person you are playing with. I don't really know why Gearbox is bothering with this though. They've always done good without difficulty settings and the game levels with you, so I don't see the need for this, but it's there just like it was for Borderlands 3 for anyone that cares. Unless they go in more with this difficulty thing in Borderlands 4 and start messing with drop rates and such with what difficulty you choose, like this person is asking, but I don't really want any of that, and I doubt that's what they'll do, but we don't know till further notice with that stuff. This is all me assuming it's the same as Borderlands 3 with instancing added to the feature, so take this with a grain of salt. Next up is that good old compass people like to talk about. Graham tweets out saying, quote, "The compass is the best solution for this Borderlands. The scale of the world is not like any Borderlands before, and the compass paired with Echo 4's echolocation provides the best experience for Borderlands 4, end quote. This goes on with the question asking about enemies behind you and addressing being able to see that, and Graham replies saying, quote, on either edge of the compass, along the level of where the enemy pips are, there are indicators for enemies behind you to the left or right. If you look at the state of play footage, you can see white double arrows with red backing on either end of the compass. HH then says, someone made a good point. How does the compass system inform you if a legendary drops around you and you happen to miss it? To which Graham replies, there is a unique icon on the compass for legendary gear drops. You're not going to miss your drops, end quote. Now, I wonder if the double arrows that point out enemies behind you also point out legendaries behind you, with maybe a gold arrow instead of red. It'll be nice if that's the case. I also wonder and kind of assume the lost loot machine has made a return in case we do miss a legendary, or maybe it just falls in a bad spot or off a cliff. It was in both Borderlands 3 and Wonderlands, so I don't see why it wouldn't make a return, as it was purely a quality of life enhancement, but I've just yet to hear about it unless of course I missed or forgot something. Moving on though, we have a tweet from Ritsu saying, quote, "Now, there's two things about Borderlands 4 I'm still concerned about. 1, performance. 2, balance. These aspects can absolutely bring the whole experience down, if not addressed properly. I would love for them to talk about this before release." End quote. And following up with this, we have Randy Pitchford himself responding with the most Randy reply saying, quote, "Target 60 FPS. Also, F balance. Make a sick build with some god drop loot and melt bosses. Be a legend." End quote. To which K6 replies asking if there will be no nerfs, and Randy replies with a lengthy tweet saying, quote, "Usually Graham is the guy who cleans up other people's balance mess. With this game, he's the one on top of the design for all shipping numbers and systems. It is inevitable that with so much loot and so many procedural combinations that there could be game-breaking drops that he may not have anticipated or that we may not have discovered yet. I am eager to see how Graham will handle it. The case would have to be extremely rare and likely very strange for me to usurp his decision or come over the top of his authority. I trust Graham's justice to be fair and swift, even if at times it may be merciless." End quote. Okay, strap up, because I've got a lot to say about this. And first, before I rant about balance, I want to talk about that target 60 FPS. I really like that target, as I am someone who cares a lot about optimization with games and wants to be able to enjoy having a solid frame rate. Where my worry comes into play, and maybe some of you don't care about this, and if you can have good frames regardless of how it's done, then you're happy. I, on the other hand, am not, and I'm a picky PC brat that wants his true optimization done on a game. Where I'm going with this is I hope they aren't targeting 60 FPS with AI upscaling, like DLSS included, because I have a pretty dang good PC build, and what I didn't spend that money for was for my game to only run if I run it at some AI downscale upscale resolution. I don't like when developers use this lazy way of quote-unquote optimizing their game. It affects more than just frame rate, and when you use this kind of lazy quick fix, and I hope Gearbox means they're aiming for true 60 frames and the game comes out well optimized, as that is my biggest concern with the game. I literally upgraded my PC recently for when this game drops. Obviously, not the only reason, but it was a big factor, to be completely honest. Okay, now let's move on to the balance part of this conversation. The reason I included this originally is because I want as many people to hear this as possible. Nerfs are inevitable. They're just going to happen. It's part of the process towards making a looter shooter the best it can be, and so there may be times a nerf is necessary and it will be done. I emphasize this because people use nerfing in Borderlands 3 against the game when sometimes it's necessary, and I admit some nerfs I still hate. I think the Tediore nerf was one of the most egregious and unnecessary nerfs. I don't like the recursion nerf, but that one I understand because the way it worked before was literally crashing games. I just want people to understand the process, and if you really don't enjoy that part of the process, then my recommendation is to hold off a year or so on getting the game. I personally loved the ride Borderlands 3 took me on, and it's part of what inspired me to be here making videos. I loved the interaction between community and developers. I felt heard by Gearbox at times, and other times I felt angry with the way things were being done. Mayhem 2.0 was an absolute mess, and it made me drop off the game for a good couple weeks, if not more. I remember watching K6 streams nearly every day he streamed, and the community would just discuss things that need to be changed to make the game better. And we would look forward to those weekly hotfixes, seeing what they heard from us that week. It was so exciting to see our voices, our ideas, and opinions being put straight into a hotfix note saying we heard you. I know I'm the minority when it comes to loving Borderlands 3, but those times were truly special to me, and I really look forward to that process all over again with Borderlands 4, albeit seems that they are off to a much better start this time around, which makes me that much more excited. But anyway, I'm done waxing poetic about Borderlands 3. In the path to where it is now, although my last bit of advice to any that haven't played since all those updates, I really recommend you try the game, and if you have them, try the DLC as well. Massive improvements have been made. And speaking of massive improvements, we can move forward. If it wasn't clear enough, dedicated drops are confirmed for the launch of Borderlands 4. And even bigger, if you missed my last video, or Gearbox at PAX East, then you missed the part where they said every mini-boss and boss has their own dedicated loot. That is huge for Borderlands 4. Obviously, we don't know how many mini-bosses and bosses there are in the game, but from this statement, I have to imagine the dedicated loot pools are very well spread out. No more 3 or 4 legendaries dedicated to one enemy. At least I hope not, if they are using every boss and mini-boss for dedicated loot. A quick plug though, if you haven't checked them out, I covered PAX East and the State of Play pretty extensively in my last 2 videos, and I highly recommend checking those out if you are interested in knowing every last detail we know so far about Borderlands 4. Links to both down in the description below the like button, and if you enjoy, be sure to subscribe. Moving forward, we have JoltsDude139 again, link down below, showing this image and saying it appears so far from what we have seen that they have shrunk the list of things that can roll. He suggests that it seems that there are no more brand-specific buffs or gear-specific, and everything is just a flat buff. I wonder if we just haven't seen it yet, but if this is the case, this is huge for shrinking down how much can roll on a piece of loot. Getting rid of rolls like plus 10% Maliwan fire rate or assault rifle fire rate, and just making it flat out plus 10% fire rate is huge if that's the case. I am curious to see if they gutted those kinds of rolls from being possible, and I'm sure if they did, it's something they felt was necessary to balance out for some other kind of additional rolls or loot we get from farming. Next up, if you've yet to see, Nintendo put out a video with Randy Pitchford and others talking about Borderlands 4 being on the Nintendo Switch 2. I don't know how many of you realistically are excited or care about this, but I thought it was really interesting because Randy Pitchford states that this is not a port, and they're making Borderlands 4 directly for the Switch 2. That immediately got me more excited about this happening. I love the idea of an actual Switch 2 version of Borderlands 4. Hopefully, meaning optimization will be pretty good. Granted, I'm sure this means graphically it might look different. I think it'll be interesting to compare what it looks like with a PlayStation version and then compare that with a PC version. I'm very curious, and I've been on the fence about buying a Switch 2. I'm kind of just waiting till it's out and I can see/hear from people's hands-on experience, plus my friends getting one, so maybe I'll get to have my own hands-on experience. It will also be really cool if Gearbox optimizes this enough to the point where it can fit on one of Nintendo's cartridges, because, well, I love collecting physical games, so this would 100% get added to the pile. Anyways, moving on, we have one last thing that I want to share with you guys, and this is from LazyData. It's a thread on Twitter from him talking about the weapon enhancement modifications and his concerns with no artifacts and just the weapon enhancement modifications. He says, quote, "Not a fan of the artifact slot becoming an allegiance slot, pigeonholing us into using just one weapon at a time. Like, this is the game with billions of guns, hello," end quote. And then Graham replies saying, quote, "You just need a full set of weapons with a Torg licensed part. So Maliwan SMG with stickies, Jacob's pistol with stickies, you get the idea," end quote. So from this right here, I get what he's saying. Like, you only need those parts. You don't need all of those parts matching on one gun. It has to be throughout your arsenal. So I get that, but this goes even further. I started reading even further, and LazyData says, yeah, for 90% of the time, I'm sure the system will be fine. It's when I get to the hyper optimized stuff is where this system causes friction. Also, it takes away from our ground slam boost slot, so rip spark plug and hot drop, etc. And then Byrdman comes in and goes back and forth with him, and I'll read this to you as well. He goes, "I mean, we really don't know yet if some of these will have cool bonuses like that on legendaries and whatnot. I for sure get what you're saying, but I think we're still in that gray area of we just don't know. And LazyData is more concerned with, they seem so gun oriented that it'd be strange if they also suddenly had all the slam and melee stuff without a mention of that. Hope they work something out for those playstyles, because from what we've seen of this slot, it's 20 ways to make guns do damage instead of BL3's 20 ways to make 20 different things do damage. Bird replies, I mean, there's also that 1 out of 3 set bonus thing, so clearly we're getting something spicy with that. I agree though, I love having different ways to do damage outside just weapons. Sparkplug builds were dope because they were wacky and strong equally. I wanted to read this whole thread. It was a lot, but I wanted to read this whole thread because I agree with what's being said here on both ends of the fence. Like, we haven't seen everything, so we don't know everything. And maybe there's ways to boost all that other stuff. But I also have had that same concern, low-key, that LazyData's having. I didn't really know how to word it. I think he did it a lot better than I could. That's why I wanted to read this. But there does seem to be a lot of focus on buffing your guns, like really, really buffing your guns, which is great. That's excellent. But I get what he's saying. There was a lot of different ways to fight in Borderlands 3. There was grenade builds, there was melee builds, and wacky ways with, I remember using the, what was it, the red suit, the one that makes you immune to radiation damage, and then there was this Maliwan gun that basically made like an aura of radiation explode around you, and you could just fire that and do a crap load of damage. That was one of Moxsy's builds. Shout out to him, he's amazing when it comes to builds. But yeah, I get what he's saying. There is a concern here of diversity for builds outside of just using the weapon, and I hope Borderlands 4 does keep that. I, again, look forward to seeing whatever they have to show off for endgame stuff. I really just can't wait to see it all. But I think what Byrdman had to say here in this thread was also equally fair, that we haven't seen everything, but also there is that firmware for the gear sets, and maybe that gives us a lot of other buffs. Maybe that's how endgame comes to be more diversified in all sorts of ways with melee and ground slam and all these different things. Maybe that firmware gives us a lot of things that artifacts would normally give us to allow that build diversity. I look forward to finding out all of this with the rest of you, and anytime there is any breadcrumb of information, I'll be here to talk about it. Borderlands 4 is easily the thing I'm most excited for this year for gaming. I do work and then just do this in my free time, so I do the best I can to cover this when I can and get my videos out as quick as I can. Thank you all again for all the support I've gotten recently on my last 2 videos, all the subscribers, all the new ones. Welcome to this channel. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll have everybody that I've mentioned in this video linked down below. Byrdman, LazyData, JoltsDude, K6, all of them will be linked down below. Check them all out. They're all amazing people, awesome YouTubers, awesome content creators, awesome people, and awesome streamers. So check them out down below. Check out my past 2 videos if you've missed out on them, and I super appreciate you all. Let me know what you think of everything we talked about here today. There is a lot of different things we just talked about, and I'm curious to hear which one sparked some interest in you, or hear some thoughts you might have on one of these topics. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.